Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Parker, and I am the Director of Alumni Professional Enrichment for the MSU Alumni Association. Thank you for joining us for today's Professional Series webcast, Job Search Secrets Revealed. We are looking forward to a dynamic chat today with one of our Spartan alums, Kevin Donlin. Kevin is a contributing co-author to Guerrilla Marketing for Job Hunters 3.0. He's the author of 3 other job search books, and of course graduated from Michigan State in 1988. Kevin has helped nearly 10,000 job seekers since 1996. He has been interviewed by ABC TV in Detroit, NBC in Minneapolis, Fox News in Minneapolis, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, the New York Post, the list goes on. Kevin is a dynamic presenter with creative ideas that will hopefully inspire you to think out of the box with your job search and try some things that perhaps it hadn't occurred to you to try before, or maybe you weren't brave enough to try before. So with that, I will turn the driving over to Kevin. Kevin, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Good afternoon. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Am I coming through okay, loud and clear? I'm hoping I am. So I have the...
You sound great, Kevin. I'm sorry.
That's okay if you're muting yourself. I'm just going to click ahead here. This is our title today, Job Search Secrets Revealed. I'm really delighted to be with you folks today. Quick background on myself. As Lisa introduced me, I am a contributing co-author to what I think is probably the best job search book ever written. Not because I wrote 10 pages of it. I don't make a nickel for recommending it, but it's written by my former business partner, David Perry. He's a working recruiter. And the ideas in that book will shorten your job search dramatically. So you can hang up now, frankly, and you just got full value from our entire session, because this is a huge brain dump of David's 22 plus years of experience, my own 15 odd years of experience doing this, and a whole lot of other folks. So I'd encourage you to grab a copy of this book. It's a real kind of encyclopedic treatment of what we're going to be talking about today. And that's why you should listen to me. But really, that's not important. Here's what's important. I'm a Spartan just like you. Graduated in 1988, and it's really been my delight and privilege. I've been back to MSU 3 times since then to speak on campus to job search, to folks looking for jobs, alumni and students. Currently, I'm based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I'm pretty far away, but I'm happy to get back anytime I can, and actually delighted to speak with you folks today over our webinar. And this is just a quick further rundown of what I have been doing. I stopped adding at 10,000 people that I know have either read my columns or sent me an email or been a client of mine. And 47 states is the best figure. I'm closer to 48 states now. I know I've never helped anyone in Arkansas for some reason. Was a job search columnist for the Minneapolis Star-Tribune for 10 years, wrote a weekly column for them. And again, before I stopped counting, it was more than 100 seminars and webinars nationwide that I've spoken at. So a lot of experience doing this, but more importantly, I get a lot of energy back from the folks that I speak to. And as we're going today, I know Lisa is on mute, but folks, if you do have questions, you can certainly type them below. I can't answer all of them, of course, but what I'll let Lisa do is kind of pick out some of the representative questions, and there will be at least one portion during the end when we can break for Q&A, and Lisa will just ask me representative questions from folks. And I may throw a monkey wrench in the works and actually stop maybe halfway through if it looks like we're ahead of schedule. I know we're going, I believe, to the bottom of the hour. So there may be there's going to be one and at least 2 chances for you to ask questions. So just type them below, and I'll let Lisa pick out the ones that are going to help most folks. So first question here, a pop quiz. Does anyone know what the significance of this number is? You can go ahead and type it in the box below. 7.6. It was just in the news last week. I'll wait another 5 seconds or so. Almost. Some folks are asking, is this the number of months it takes to find a job? You're not too far off, actually. Yes, Rory, you're correct. It's the national unemployment rate right now. The national unemployment rate is 7.6% as of May. And this is a figure you're going to hear all the time in the news, but frankly, it doesn't mean a lot to you. Here's why. This is your unemployment rate if you're looking for a job right now. This is the only number that matters to you if you're looking for a job right now. And I want to do a quick sidebar here, and I don't want to start off by beating you down with bad news. That's the last thing I want to do. In fact, I want to give you a quick suggestion is to not turn on the news before breakfast and probably before lunch. And you know what? Just go ahead and don't watch the news until after dinner, because it's uniformly bad, especially economic news. It doesn't matter who's in the White House, by the way. The news is typically bad on the economy. It's just because bad news is more interesting, sells more newspapers, gets more people to watch TV than good news. So that's just a fact of life. So you're going to be hearing all of these facts and figures about how dreadful the job market is and how bad the numbers are. But really, if you're looking for work right now, your unemployment rate is 100%. And I'm going to do everything in my power in the next 50 minutes or so to fix that for you. All right, here's another number. This is a number that you almost never see in the news, but it's right there on the Bureau of Labor Statistics website. Anyone want to hazard a guess? What does 36.9 refer to? I'll give you a few seconds here. 36.9. This is almost never featured on the news. It's not the percentage of people who are happy at work. It's not the percentage of people who are fully engaged. It's nothing to do with job satisfaction. I'll let one more lucky contestant. By the way, you get nothing for winning other than satisfaction here. Yes, Rory. Oh, nope, sorry. Average is correct. It's not the average age of people looking for work. It's actually the average number of weeks people take to find a job. Right now, on average, it takes 36.9 weeks to find a job. That was as of May. The interesting thing about this, by the way, that's just north of 9 months. That's as long as it takes to create a human life. So it's quite a long period of time. Before March of 2010, it had only been above 30 weeks once since the government started keeping statistics in 1948. Since March of 2010, however, it has only been below 30 weeks one time. In other words, for I think it's 53 straight months, or 53 out of 54 months, it has been above 30 weeks on average to find a job. Now, the significance of that is you really can't afford to be average anymore. If you want to be average, just do what everyone else is doing. And if you ask around, everyone else is hurting in their job search. So this is like here's another quiz for you. This is a this may seem irrelevant, but it's actually very relevant. If your house is on fire, which direction do you run? North, west, east, or south? If your house is on fire, the correct answer is you run away. You run out. It doesn't matter. You run away from that fire. So if you want your job search to be average, just do what everyone else is doing, and you'll get the results everyone else is getting. If you want to be different and try unconventional methods, just look at what everyone else is doing and go in another direction. That's kind of the thesis of my whole webinar today, is you're going to zig when everyone else is zagging. When everyone else goes left, you go right. When everyone else goes up, you go down. So that's going to improve your job search if you make that your philosophy. You're going to be unconventional. So here's an average job search, 36.9 weeks. Average stinks. This is a figure I think you'll like, 6 to 12. This is the average number of weeks it takes a guerrilla job hunter to find work. 6 to 12 weeks. That's a dramatically shorter job search than an average job search. So I want you to start thinking guerrilla, as in unconventional. And the tactics I'm going to present to you today are certainly that. They're all proven and they're all unconventional. And this is the mindset I want you to adopt. Look at what everyone else is doing and then do the opposite, and you'll probably have a pretty good job search tactic to go from. So here's today's agenda. I am a former teacher, so I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to tell you, and then after I'm done I'm going to tell you what I told you. So here's our agenda for today. 5 guerrilla tactics. I want you to stop networking and do something else. I want you to let others sell you. I'm going to show you what goes into a guerrilla resume, then a fantastic example of a guerrilla tactic we call the coffee cup caper. And finally, I'm going to suggest very gently but strongly that you get some help in your job search. So let's press on. Go to number 1 here. Stop networking. Now, show of hands, I'm going to do this virtually. I'm going to close my eyes and just imagine, out of the 150 people on this webcast, how many of you raise your hands, you get up in the morning and you can't wait to start networking? You just live to go to job search events. It just thrills you to go grab a cup of coffee and sit in a room with 30 other job seekers and trade horror stories. I'm kind of embellishing a bit, but I am predicting there are only about 10 to 15 hands in the air. Whenever I do a live event, typically it's 10% of the room. I call them the mutants. I say that fondly, but folks who just love to get out and network. And I'm an introvert actually. I am a writer by trade, and I don't easily go out and meet other people. And frankly, this is difficult for most people. And that's why most people don't get all of networking out of it that they could. They're simply, the hearts are not in it. So you're going to hear over and over that networking is how you find a job. Yes, it is, but networking done right is how you find a job. And so I want to help you do your networking better and with more of your heart into it, and a bit more unconventionally. I want you to do it by stop networking, and I want you to start doing something else. I would like you to start being useful to other people instead. This is a change only in your mind, but it's going to affect how you go out of the front door each day, how you make phone calls. It's going to affect the emails that you send, and it's going to really tremendously improve your results if you just stop networking and start being useful to other people. Here's why this works. When you go out networking, you've got a lot on your mind. You're thinking about your job search. You're trying to remember your 30-second commercial, your elevator pitch. You're wondering if you got spinach in your teeth. Is your tie straight? All these things, right? And people are self-conscious. And it's not fun. It's not really intellectually healthy, I think, to be self-conscious all the time. And this is why a lot of people flail when it comes to networking. So if you change your mindset and you start thinking, how can I be useful to other people, it takes the focus off of you where it makes you feel uncomfortable and it makes you ineffective. It puts the focus on other people. And let me tell you, we always make room in our lives for people who are useful to us. It's just a selfish fact of life. And so if you start thinking about how you can be useful to other people, it's going to improve every facet of your job search. Let me give you some ideas and some examples here. This is very complicated stuff, folks. Ready? Here's how you be useful to other people. You find needs, you fill them, and you repeat the process. It's just that simple. And again, is this a secret? Well, people tell you to network, but you don't network effectively, and so you think networking doesn't work. Well, networking does work, but it's done this way. It's about being useful to other people. This first was given to me, by the way, about 5 years ago by a very expensive executive coach. His name is Dan Sullivan, and he used this idea to help one of his clients, who's a financial services professional, turn his business around. I think it was 2008 when he gave this advice to the guy. But if you remember the economic crisis of 2008, and this financial services professional was just hurting. No one would return his calls. His clients were all taking their money out of his accounts, and he was really hurting. Well, Dan told him, and I'm going to tell you, stop worrying about making a sale. Stop worrying about you and your needs. Just start being useful to your clients. Give them news, information, leads, resources. Give them your time, if nothing else. But if you start being useful to other people, they will make time to talk to you. And it turned his business around, and then it turned other clients' businesses around for Dan, and he gave it to a workshop I was in. And then I've been sharing it with job seekers ever since, for going on 4.5 years now. And let me tell you, it just changes everything. It changes the game for you. Now let me give you a bit more guidance, a few more examples here, because we want to make this specific. Here's what you do. Five people who are well connected, people that you'd like to make a good impression on, people who can help you in your job search. You may find them on LinkedIn, on your street, in your church or house of worship. You may find them at companies where you want to work. Doesn't matter where you find these people, but just pick 5 people who are well connected and who have got a lot of leads, a lot of connections. They may be helpful to you. And simply, number 2, be useful to them. Share with them your knowledge, We've all got knowledge. We've all got skills. We graduated from Michigan State after all. We've got some good stuff between our ears. And you know what? You can share your referrals. You can share industry news or tips. And if you're totally out of ideas, you can at least share your time. This is another way of saying volunteering, I suppose. But the idea here is, if you are useful to other people, if you send them a link, an email link to an article that says, saw this, thought of you, or better yet, if you make a copy of an article, put it in the mail with a post-it note and a business card, saw this, thought of you, that's going to make a tremendous impression on people. And we all make time for people who are helpful to us. It's just a fact. I know, here's the opposite of this, by the way. I get bombed every day on LinkedIn. I've got, I think, 3,000 connections on LinkedIn. I've been on LinkedIn since 2003, November. I've been on LinkedIn almost 10 years now. I was an early adopter, and I get just bombed with messages every day from people saying, do you know anyone who's hiring? Or, can you help my son? He's just graduating. Or, I'm looking for a job. And it's just, it's pathetic, frankly, and I can't help everyone, even if they told me exactly what they were looking for. There's just no time in the day for those folks. But I very rarely and occasionally will get an email that's helpful to me, and I'm just a human being. I'm selfish like everyone else. I'll make time to read that email and answer that phone call if they're calling me, and read every subsequent email I get from those people. It's just because they're helpful to me. So just try this for 21 days and see what kind of results you get. Stop networking and start being useful. It will change the game for you tremendously. And here's the test. If you hang up the phone or finish a coffee meeting with someone, or you push send on the email, ask yourself, was the other person happy to hear from me? Are they going to be glad that I just made that communication with them? And really, how do I feel about myself right now? Do I feel good? Do they feel good? If you can truthfully say, I feel good about myself, I think that other person was happy to hear from me. Congratulations, you were just useful, and keep doing more of that. Alright, here's another one. Alright, again, there are 150 of you on this webinar. Please raise your hands if you love to sell. I can see you in the theater of the mind. I'm predicting there are about 20 people in the audience, maybe 25, who love to sell. You're outgoing, you can handle rejection, you may even enjoy cold calls, who knows, but probably 20 to 25 people out of 150 love to sell. For the rest of you, you probably hate selling. Well, good news, bad news. Bad news first, you're in the middle of a sales and marketing campaign right now, aka your job search. You are engaged in the most important sales and marketing campaign of your life to date, actually. So it's very important that you get comfortable with the idea that, yes, you must sell yourself. By selling, I mean you have to find employers, convince them to meet with you for an interview, and then convince them to give you money in the form of a salary. So you're in a sales and marketing campaign right now. That's the bad news if you hate sales. The good news is you don't have to go it alone. In fact, there are ways to let other people do the selling for you. This is a lot of fun, and it's our second topic, which is to let other people sell you. I'm going to give you 3 ways to do it, and we do it through the magic of testimonials. Before we get into the 3 ways, don't be alarmed. This is a screen capture from an infomercial. Now, I'm a copywriter by trade. I write sales letters and display ads. I get paid a lot of money to do this, and there are people who make even more money than me. They're the men and women who write commercials, they write scripts for infomercials. I do write some video scripts myself, but the people who write the scripts for infomercials, they get paid a lot of money because infomercials cost a lot of money to produce and stage. In fact, you can bet on at least $250,000 to $500,000 production costs on many infomercials, not to mention the airtime that you have to buy on television. Now, when you look at an infomercial, 30 minutes in length, you're going to see something interesting. Probably 10 to 15 minutes of a 30-minute infomercial are going to be testimonials. People talking about the product, the Thigh Master, the Miracle Knife, the Goop in a Jar. And it's the before and after testimonials, and these are typically the most effective and most believable parts of a testimonial. They aren't even written by professionals. It's just people talking about the product and what it did for them. Now, in your job search, you can leverage this same very powerful idea and let other people sell for you. And here's how you do it. If my clicker will work. I've got 3 ways for you today. Method number one is to simply make full use of the recommendations on your LinkedIn profile. Now, I'm hoping that if I were to ask for a show of hands, 100% of folks on this webinar have a profile on LinkedIn. This is really a must item now. Back in the 90s when I last looked for a job, it was cool to have an email address on your resume, believe it or not. In 1994, I got my last job. I think largely because I impressed the hiring manager, I had an email address on my resume. Email address quickly became required. And then a few years later, LinkedIn became a nice thing to have. Well, guess what? LinkedIn is now required. So you've got to be on LinkedIn. And that's a topic of a whole other webinar. If Lisa asks, I may do that. I don't know. But in any case, you're on LinkedIn, let's say. Well, on LinkedIn, you're going to have recommendations. And these are simply good things that other people have said about you. Now, if you don't have any recommendations now, or you're not comfortable or happy with the number that you have, there's an easy solution for that. The solution is to give recommendations. Excuse me. You want to give recommendations to other people to get them in return. In my experience, for every 3 recommendations you give out, you'll get back 1 or 2 in return. So start this week, make this your new hobby. Give recommendations to people you have worked with or worked for, even professors. But the more you give, the more you get back. Just don't do it all in one day, because if you have 15 recommendations with the same date, recruiters are smart. They'll see that it looks like you got fired on that date, and that's the day you walked around the office begging for testimonials. So don't do them all on one date. Please parcel these out. However, you can never have too many LinkedIn recommendations. So this is an example of a very good one. I know it's a very good one because I actually wrote it. And this is, if you look on my LinkedIn profile, you'll find this eventually if you page down. I wrote this for an MSU student. His name's not Bob, but he impressed the heck out of me a few years ago when I met him on campus. And I wrote this for a Michigan State student that I met and worked with for a couple of days. So this is an example of a good LinkedIn recommendation. So the first way to let others sell you is to get as many LinkedIn recommendations as you can. But this is where most people stop, and you want to take it a step further. The same recommendation can be reused on your resume. And here's what it looks like. All you need are 2 or 3 bullet points like this, the same language off your LinkedIn profile, but in your resume it makes a huge impression. You introduce it by saying reviewer said, manager said, client said, supervisor said, vendor, client, whoever. Use their job title. Don't use their name here. You can always put their name. There are 2 ways to do this. You can do this blind, leaving the name off, and just say reviewer said, manager said, or you can use it with the name and the job title and the company. It could say Bob impressed me, blah 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 blah, and then the name Kevin Donlin and the company and the date below it. Either way, make sure that you're using actual language that can be backed up with an actual recommendation on your LinkedIn profile or somewhere else in writing. It's very important to be able to prove any quotes that you include on your resume. So you can use them with or without the name, but do include the quote marks. It makes it look more real, and if it's within the last couple years, use the year that the person said it about you. So the big idea here is to reuse the testimonials from LinkedIn on your resume. Here's the third idea. This is even more advanced, but it's a lot of fun. It's super effective. I told you that I write sales letters for a living. Well, here's where you put maybe one of your best testimonials. You don't have to, but you can certainly include it in your cover letter. And the place to put this is often going to be the PS. Well, first of all, you've probably never seen a PS in a cover letter, and that's because most cover letters are incredibly dull and ineffective. Now, I write sales letters for a living, and I know that the PS is the second most read part of any letter, second only to the salutation. So, dear Kevin, that's going to get read first in a letter, and the PS after the signature is the second most read part of any letter. It's because we don't read, excuse me, my dog is here. I'm going to have to, wish I could mute my dog. There's a UPS man at the door. I'll just ignore it. The PS always gets read because people page down and they want to see who the letter is from. And after they see the signature, they see the PS, and bam, you've got them there. So in your PS, you can include a testimonial. If you didn't use it in your resume, it's always going to get read, and it makes a tremendous impression. So these are 3 ways to let other people sell you, is to make full use of LinkedIn recommendations, reuse them in your resume, and then include them in your cover letter. By the way, if you're stumped on how to get testimonials, 3 ways to do that. LinkedIn is the obvious choice here. Everyone should be on LinkedIn, so hopefully you've got some testimonials there. Letters, emails, awards, comb through your documents, your files. As long as it's been written down about you, you can use it. And finally, if you don't have quite the testimonial that you're looking for, don't be afraid to call someone and ask. Ask them language like this: hey, I know you're busy, but I remember about 3 months ago you said nice things about what I was doing. Here's what I think I heard you say, and then give them a quick summary. Is that accurate? And they'll probably say yes. Well, again, I know you're busy, but what if, could I just type something out and send it to you, and you make any changes to it, maybe add to or subtract from it until it says what you want it to say? They'll agree to that. Well, then just type your own letter of recommendation, email it to that person, and within a few hours they'll just reply and give it to you right back again. So don't be afraid to call and ask people, and then write the thing for them, frankly. Send it to them by email, and boom, you've got a very nice testimonial. So however you get them, the bottom line here is you want to use testimonials. This is how you let other people sell you. Alrighty, third idea. Now again, most people on average are taking more than 36 weeks to find a job right now. And most people are sending out ordinary resumes, the kind that you were taught to send out, the kind you've seen everyone else send out. There are variations, some look better than others, but they're all kind of variations on the same theme. I'm going to give you some ideas here that will help you create and use a guerrilla resume. These are outlined more in the book, of course, but these are the highlights. And again, I wrote this section in the book on resumes, so I know this stuff back to front. Here, this is not a guerrilla resume, obviously. This is the resume of a guy we'll call Ken Smith. He was a recent graduate of college in Texas. Came into my world about 3-4 years ago when things were really bad in the job market. And Ken had been struggling for more than 6 months to find a job with this resume. It doesn't take more than 10 seconds of looking at it to realize this is sort of a train wreck. I won't go into all the gory details. However, I don't know if my pointer, I don't have a pointer, I don't need one. Just look at the employment section. His most recent job was as a trap technician. And ladies and gentlemen, what this means is he would pull the rope that sent skeet flying off to be shot at a gun club. So he was the guy throwing the clay pigeons for a living. Ken was obviously more educated and more intelligent than that, but this is what he was doing at the time. He was also a maintenance worker, i.e. a janitor at a high school, while he was also coaching football. And so he wasn't giving himself full credit for his volunteer work as a football coach. And so this resume did nothing for him. He was trying to get a position at a stock brokerage managing millions of dollars in client accounts. So you can see that it's asking the reader to make a huge leap of faith to hire a guy working at a gun club throwing clay pigeons to manage millions of dollars in stock. Not surprisingly, Ken was floundering and not getting anywhere. So I didn't actually write this for him. I used to do this for a living. I don't write them anymore. But Ken wrote the following guerrilla resume just with our guidance from the book and some other resources. But Ken put this together, and you can quickly see your eye is drawn to the top left corner of the resume for a couple reasons. One, it's red. Red is one of the most visible colors. Two, the eye reads in a Z pattern, actually. So when you look at a document, you typically read in a Z, left to right, down, and then left to right again. So knowing that the upper left-hand portion of your resume is the most valuable real estate, what we did was create this guerrilla resume format, and we completely hijack your brain, frankly, and we bypass the entire logical functioning of your brain, and we just grab your emotions, and all of a sudden you're looking at a red logo and then a Phi Theta Kappa and another logo below it. So probably the most critical element of a guerrilla resume are logos or pictures, usually 2 or 3 of them, and almost invariably the upper left-hand corner. And below these logos, what do you see there? Those are quotes, which we just talked about a few minutes ago. And if you read carefully, you'll see, I think, at least 2 and maybe 3 of them are from coaches who worked with him at college or in his current position. So we got coaches to talk about Ken's leadership skills and to make Ken come to life, and to humanize Ken, and to really intrigue readers. And that's the whole point of this. So before you've read a word of his objective statement or the selected achievements, they're all very good, by the way. They're written much better than the earlier resume. We've already kind of jumped into your head and said, hey, look, Navarro College, Phi Theta Kappa. Hey, look, this coach said this about Ken, and another coach said that about Ken. And you kind of want to find out more about Ken. And that's the whole point of your resume. At the end of the day, we want to start a conversation with this document. We do not want to tell your whole life story. We want to start a conversation. We want to make the phone ring, and that's what this resume did for Ken. As a result of using his guerrilla resume, Ken was hired within 30 days for a position at a stock brokerage firm. Now let me show you the side-by-side comparison here. On the left is before, and on the right is the after, the guerrilla resume. You don't have to read all the words. I know your screen probably won't show them clearly. It doesn't matter. Because where is your eye drawn? It's going to be drawn to that right-hand example. The right-hand example is the guerrilla resume, and that's an example of something that got one job seeker hired in 30 days in the current rotten economy. Yes.
I'm just interrupting for a moment because for some reason we just picked up some static through your mic.
Okay. Just see here. I've got nothing's changed really. Garbled, static, getting worse. Okay, nothing's changed on my end. I'm sorry. Let me just see here. The network connection. I can take a quick break here.
Jen is asking if there's a cell phone close to your mic.
I threw it on the other side. Let me throw it farther away. Just 1 second. Nothing near me now at all. Okay.
I think that's a good idea. Eric, why don't you can try, well, actually, talk for a moment. I'm not here.
Sure, I think I can just take a pause and mute and unmute myself, perhaps.
Nope, we still have it. Yeah, let's try that.
So what should I do?
Try to go into your settings and reconnect your microphone.
Okay, 1 second. I'll disconnect. Let's see here. I'll disconnect and reconnect, so I'll come right back.
Okay, it is actually sounding better, I will tell you. So perhaps whatever the interference is improving.
How's that? I'm back now.
You do sound much better.
Terrific. I'm not on VoIP. I'm right next to my router. So let's press on. And thanks for letting me know that, Lisa. So let me just recap here, because I've forgotten what I was saying. This is the before and after. So don't be Ken on the left. You want to be Ken on the right with the guerrilla resume. Here are the critical elements. Let's go back a bit. What I want to do is just explain these before we move on. The 2 elements that you really want to pay attention to in a guerrilla resume are the logos and the quotes. If you get nothing else out of this presentation, if you can start including logos and quotes on your resume, you're going to get better results. That's what we found. David has found that. My former business partner had been using guerrilla resumes since 1998. I kind of threw something else into the mix with my format changes. I've been using testimonials in resumes and cover letters since 1996, and we've all found that logos and quotes work incredibly well. So again, if you want to be like everyone else, fine, send out a resume like everyone else, but don't be surprised if you get dreadful results like everyone else. So the next idea, most job seekers click and apply. Now raise your hand if you have clicked and applied for a job in the last 30 days. And I see everyone's hand is raised. That's not surprising. This is, again, an average job search technique, and I want to tell you it stinks because, after all, most job search for most people stink. So again, thinking of what happens if your house is on fire, which direction do you run? You run out. You run away. So what's the opposite of click and apply? Well, really, there are a lot of ways. In fact, I just spoke with a woman yesterday. This is no joke. She had used a Guerrilla Resume. Wrote one for her. Again, I rarely write these anymore, but she wrote one, I wrote one for her in March. She started sending it out in April, and since her mindset had changed and she started thinking unconventionally, she actually walked into a potential employer with her Guerrilla Resume and asked, could I see the manager? And the woman at the front desk said, of course. Could I tell her who was here? And she said her name. And she got to meet the manager and started talking about the company. She had done a bit of research, had a very intelligent conversation, and said, "Hey, I'm looking for something at a company just like this." Actually, handed her the Guerrilla Resume, ended up getting hired. And it was, again, this is the opposite of click and apply. Walking into the employer, that certainly qualifies as the opposite. Mailing your resume, yes, that's different. So there are there are no limits to how you can go the opposite direction of click and apply, but I want to give you one specific example right now, something we call the coffee cup caper. And you can Google this and include my name. I've been writing about it for about 5 years now, but the coffee cup caper is really truly the opposite of click and apply, and it's just what the name implies. You're going to be sending a coffee cup in a box. If you can see the picture here, it doesn't have to be Starbucks, by the way, but an empty coffee cup in a box with a few other elements. And here's how it works. You may want to write this down, and I'll go over it pretty slowly here. And if folks have questions at the end, Lisa, you can jump in and maybe ask, but I've been talking about this for years. I hope to anticipate most of your questions. First, number one, again, you're not waiting for a job to be advertised online. You choose a target company. That's what this woman did who walked into the employer. She chose them. So choose a target company. Better yet, choose 10. 10's a good number. Pick 10 places where you want to work. Doesn't matter if they're hiring. In fact, it's probably best if they're not, because you're going to have less competition this way. So you get a target list of companies, let's say 10 of them. Second, you're going to send a FedEx 2-day box on Monday. Inside this box are going to be 3 things: your Guerrilla Resume, or a very good resume if you're not there yet, a cover letter, and you're going to send an empty Starbucks cup. It could be Caribou coffee, whatever you like, but an empty Starbucks cup, an empty coffee cup. Now here's what you're going to write in your cover letter before we get to part 3. In your cover letter, you're going to end the cover letter with language like this: I really look forward to meeting with you to discuss your needs over a cup of coffee. I will be calling very soon to answer any questions you may have. How soon? Question mark. You may be surprised. ... You can even make that a PS. Remember we talked about PSs earlier? I'll say that again. At the end of your cover letter, it could be the closing paragraph or the PS, you include language like this: I really look forward to speaking with you about your needs over a cup of coffee, period. I'll be calling you very soon to answer any questions you may have, period. How soon? Question mark. You may be surprised. ... Now, if there are any Rhodes Scholars in the audience, maybe you see where I'm headed with this idea. On Wednesday, you're going to call, and what happens when you send a FedEx box, by the way? You get a delivery notification. It'll say, signed for at 10:30 by A. Smith. So, at 11 o'clock on Wednesday, you call and say, hi, I'm the person who sent you the coffee cup. You just got it. And clam up and let the other person talk. And at this point, ladies and gentlemen, you are in the middle of a phone interview, which is, you know, the first cousin of a job interview. So be ready to interview for 30 seconds up to maybe 10-15 minutes. You have no idea how long this is going to go. But when you call to follow up on Wednesday or 2 days later, be ready to do a phone interview then and there. This is so powerful. I can tell you that in our experience, for every 10 of these that you send out, you can expect at a minimum 4 or 5 phone conversations, which could quickly turn into phone interviews. Your numbers actually may be better than that, but I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. I would expect you're going to be batting 400 to 500 for every 10 of these that you send out. And let me tell you something else. No one's going to yell at you. It's impossible to get yelled at for being creative. We've had this work with people at nonprofits, at Fortune 500 companies, at small companies. I've used it myself just to verify that it works, and people are appreciative. By the way, why the empty Starbucks cup? Because sometimes people will say, I can't meet with you for coffee, or I'm busy, or I can't do that. You can say, well, we can do it over the phone. You've already got a coffee cup right now. And that disarms people, makes them laugh, and it keeps them on the phone. So if they try to get rid of you, say, well, we can have coffee virtually over the phone. You've got a cup in the box. Try that. So that's why we include the coffee cup. It's very important. So all these elements work together. The only day you don't want to send this would be a Wednesday, because you don't want to be calling people on a Friday. Also, you don't want to be calling people on a Monday, because people are mentally checked out on Monday and Friday. So you want to time this so that the box arrives Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. Now let me anticipate another question. Excuse me. You may be afraid of this. You may not trust me, and that's fine. It's good to be suspicious or critical thinking. However, the way to test this and see for yourself is to practice on a company. Send this to a pig farm or a paint factory or a slaughterhouse, any place you have no intention on earth of ever working, and see what happens when you practice on someone. Now let me tell you, we had a guy about 4 years ago. You've got to be careful, because he sent it to a company he was practicing on, and they actually hired him. This is not a joke. He had been interviewed in January by a little company called Granger. Maybe you've heard of them. And he didn't receive a reply to his email. Nothing. No acknowledgement. And this happens to a lot of people. Well, he sent his coffee cup caper in June, 6 months after being ignored, frankly. And the recruiter called him back the same day with a very enthusiastic voicemail message. He was interviewed and hired. So just be careful of who you practice on, because you may end up working for them. That's how powerful this is. We call this the coffee cup caper. If you want to learn more, you can Google it. I believe it's also covered in some detail in the book that we wrote. Now I'm going to give you some examples of 3 real-life case studies of people who were hired using the coffee cup caper. This is success story number 1. Steve Cobain. This is his real name, actually. He agreed to let us use his testimonial. I actually got on a plane and flew to Pittsburgh to interview Steve because it was so remarkable. That's me sitting on the left. You can't see me because I cropped myself out of the photo, but I met Steve in a hotel room and videotaped him for a couple of hours because the story was so fantastic. Steve had been laid off in his 50s as a VP at a large, well-known bank. He had sent out resumes by email for a year, and when he stopped counting, there were more than 1,000 he had sent out. His friends and relatives telling him he had to settle or maybe move to Arizona. There was just nothing for him in Pittsburgh. Well, he followed our instructions to the letter. He created a list of 10 target employers. He sent them 10 coffee cup capers in the mail. Steve actually batted pretty well. He got 8 job interviews. He made 10 phone calls, so he got 8 interviews. And he received 6 job offers. These were 6 job offers for positions that didn't even exist before Steve had contacted these companies. He was hired 6 weeks later after he started this in a position created for him at 6 figures. And again, this is going to sound incredible, but the day he accepted his job, one of the competing employers showed up on his doorstep, rang the bell, and pretty much begged him to reconsider and come work for them. So he had people literally fighting over him, and that's what happened when he used the coffee cup caper. So this works for people in their 50s. This is Mary from just down the road from you folks in Birmingham. She had been, excuse me, searching for a job for 20 weeks in traditional methods, had 0 interviews to show for it. She just started off modestly. She sent out 1 coffee cup caper to a position that was advertised on LinkedIn, actually. So she didn't follow our instructions to the letter, but she applied to a position advertised on LinkedIn. Now, not only did she call to follow up to her coffee cup caper, she also had an interview. And after that interview, it was during the Halloween season, she had her thank you note couriered over to the office along with a candy apple. And it was sent by a courier. She actually paid a friend to pose as a courier and take her thank you note. So, quick sidebar here: you must always send a thank you note. Email doesn't count. Text doesn't count. It must be printed and mailed in a square envelope with a stamp. Mary took it a step further and had her thank you note couriered over with a candy apple. You don't have to do that. It may not be advisable in all cases, but at the very least, you've got to mail a thank you note to everyone you ever interview with. And you know what? Again, further sidebar here. Send a thank you note to everyone who's been helpful to you in your job search. Remember at the beginning we talked about being useful to other people? Anytime anyone, anywhere does you a good turn, get their mailing address and send them a thank you note in the mail with a stamp. I've said that twice now. It makes an incredible impression. Thank you notes are little gifts, and they cost you nothing but a 46-cent stamp, and you know, you can get thank you notes in bulk at Office Depot, 50 of them for 20 bucks. And make this your new hobby, sending thank you notes every day to people who have been useful to you in your job search, especially everyone you ever meet at an office where you interview. That includes the receptionist at the door. Get his or her business card. Thank them. Thank every person you meet at an interview with a mailed thank you note. I'm going to get off my soapbox now and continue our story. So Mary ended up being hired in 7 weeks as a marketing executive assistant, and it all started for her with a coffee cup caper. The final example is a fellow just down the road from me. I live in a city called Edina, Minnesota. Steve Fox is my daughter's lacrosse coach. So we're keeping it personal here. Steve is a sales executive, and he had been out of work for quite a long period of time. He sent a coffee cup caper after Labor Day to a target employer, and he ended up meeting that employer at a trade show. They set up an interview at the trade show, and he met them on October 10th and was hired 15 days after that interview. It all took 8 weeks total, and it all started with a coffee cup caper. So let me recap here. How does this work? Well, these people, here's what they did. They got a Guerrilla Resume, then they got creative, and really they got hired in 6 to 8 weeks. I spoke earlier about 6 to 12 weeks being the average for a guerrilla job search. Well, who said you had to be average? These people all got hired in 6 to 8 weeks, even faster. And it all started because, frankly, they made up their own rules. They zigged when everyone else zagged. They ran away from the traditional job search. So as we get ready to wrap up here, I want to now ambush Lisa and ask her to go ahead and, if she'd like, to ask me any representative questions. I know a lot of people have been typing on the left. I have not been able to keep up with all the questions. But Lisa, do you have anything that has been popping up from folks that you'd like me to address?
Yes. We have a lot of questions, and I anticipate a few more here in these closing moments. I'd like to start with another Kevin's question. I think you got to some of it in terms of the 50-plus worker when you were showing the coffee cup caper. But back when you were talking about the networking process and having other people to help sell you and such, are there any differences that you think, any adjustments that the 50-plus job seeker is going to need to make? Kevin's been reaching out and just not getting a lot of interviews.
Well, it's funny. A lot of people at age 50 think they're going to be discriminated against because they're going to cost more. There are all kinds of, there's a lot of head trash, frankly, garbage, mental garbage that is knocking around in our heads. And there are people in their 20s who think the same thing. I'm not experienced enough. So no matter where you are in the continuum of life, you can find reasons to be unhappy about your job search. I was just reading there are any number of articles that talk about how to deflect the age question and say, hey, you know what? Yeah, I'm 50, and guess what? My attention span's longer than that of a gerbil on 2 liters of Mountain Dew. I don't have Facebook open. I don't have instant messaging going. I can actually sit down, pay attention, and do my job. How does that grab you? And that kind of ends that discussion in an interview. And don't be offended, young folks listening. I'm not putting you down because you have Facebook open while you're working. But for the seasoned citizen, someone over 50, You really just want to take these ideas and run with them the same way. There's no limit to the number of people you can be useful to, and you have kind of a whiff of confidence about you. It changes everything when you're just being useful to other people, and you're the one sending emails that say, saw this, thought of you. Or Kevin, I know that, I mean, here's an example. If anyone wants to be my new best friend, Kevin, I know you write display ads for Fortune 1000 companies. My next door neighbor is looking for someone to put together a sales letter campaign. I'd like to introduce you to that person. Well, guess what? You're my new best friend, and I'm going to remember you with favor, and I'm going to open my network to you and make time for you. So it works for anyone at any age, and the beauty of it is it's so simple. And actually it's overlooked because it's so simple. We want to have technology. We want to spend large amounts of money and get training and get a new app and buy a new suit. None of that's needed to be useful to other people. And there's no limit to how creative you can be.
Well, and I experience, of course, in the Alumni Association, a lot of people are trying to categorize themselves in different ways, but there's consistent problems. Like, for example, when having other people sell you, I love how you demonstrated this in a very controlled way, because let's say I've always been a manager, but now I'm in transition and I want to do something else. I've always been an engineer, but now I want to go this way. If we have other people selling us and we're not controlling it, or if our resume content is speaking more about history versus where we're going, I think that can contribute to the problem.
Yeah, let me address that. Actually, that's a very good question, Lisa, and I'll keep it short. The way to make a career transition is to rewrite everything you've done before in terms of what you want to do next on your resume, your cover letter, even your LinkedIn profile. If you were a lobster fisherman and you want to be a ship's captain next, you rewrite your lobster experience as in terms of seamanship, running the boat, keeping it from sinking, getting out to the spot and back again. If you're a lobster fisherman and you want to become a third-grade art teacher, well, you talk about your experience in terms of leading people, training new lobster fishermen to do the job. So really, you can rewrite everything you've done before in terms of what you want to do next. There's no limit to how you can do that. You just can't make stuff up, of course. But if you do the thinking for the reader and tell them the significance of what you did before in terms of how it qualifies you to do what you want to do next, that's when your resume works better. And the final tip I want to give folks is this: if you are looking to make a career change, or you don't feel you have the experience to do the job that you want to do, and the ideal job is just not coming available to you, well, guess what? It probably doesn't exist right now anyway. So the way to circumvent that is, instead of waiting for the perfect position to show up, and you may wait years, get a less than perfect job at a perfect company or a close to perfect company. If you can get into the right company in the wrong position and you start doing that work you don't like so much, if you do it exceptionally well, they will be open to creating a new position that is ideal for you. I've seen this again and again and again. There are people who are administrative assistants, for example, and they get hired and they end up becoming art directors 3 years later, 2 years later, even a year later, because they started doing that work in their spare time, coming in on weekends. So an easy way to make a career transition is called a half step. You get into the less than ideal company, you get into the ideal company at the less than ideal position and have the ideal position created for you, and that's how that works. Okay. Next question.
A few other questions have come in that I'm actually going to turn a bit of a twist on. People are looking for examples, of course, when things go wrong or when things have backfired. And it's been my experience in our role at the Alumni Association that it's easy as a job seeker to be more concerned about the time when perhaps something doesn't work versus the time when it does. Like you mentioned, 4 times the coffee cup caper works, but of course that leaves the 6 times that it doesn't. So if the people are stopping on the 6th time, but we are getting questions to honor that of, have using logos ever backfired? Has the use of quotes ever backfired for a job seeker? Has asking other people to essentially recommend you backfired?
No, the answer is, if it has, it's minimal. I know one case, a single case, where a guy was told to stop using a logo on his resume, and it's only because his last employer was angry at him for a completely unrelated reason, and they saw his resume and said, take it off. Someone complained. That is it. Here's the reason. I'm not a lawyer, of course, but you're not trading on your logos. You're just simply using a visual element to prove your experience. If you were putting the IBM logo on a coffee cup and selling it on eBay, yeah, you've got problems. If you're putting the IBM logo on your resume and showing it as it's like having a diploma on your wall from Michigan State. Michigan State doesn't care that there's a block S on my wall. Well, Michigan State won't care if there's a block S on your resume, in my experience.
And yeah. And how can we help individuals? And I'm not saying this in a judgmental way at all, but you're showing things that are a shift that's taking people perhaps out of a comfort zone. And it is possible that the first time they try it, it's not going to go well. Or maybe they need to get warmed up on it. How does that person keep trying it? What advice do you have to help that person do it a second or third time, to send that fourth coffee cup if the first 3 times didn't generate that result?
Well, again, go back to practice on someone you don't want to work for. There's no law against that. I've told people to practice on employers, and again, a guy actually got hired accidentally. So the way to get good at this is to practice. And when it comes to making phone calls that you're uncomfortable doing, practice in front of a mirror. When you're making your phone call, stand up so you have more energy. There are 101 ways to improve your phone mannerisms. But the bottom line is practice, and you're not failing here, you're just getting results. That's a very important distinction to make. Failure is when you quit. Failure is when you drop out of the job market altogether and you just give up. That's failure. But when you get rejected, and this is very important, by the way, if an employer says, no, we're not hiring, that doesn't mean never, right? It means not today. Tomorrow, Joe in accounting may drop dead, or a safe may fall on Sally, or Cindy may retire, or Frank could get recruited away. Anything can happen tomorrow. So we've had people get hired again and again. They follow up at 30 days later, 6 months later. So very important to remember, no doesn't mean never. No doesn't mean never contact me again. No simply means not today. And so you're going to hear no very often in your job search. That's actually good news. The more no's you're hearing, that means you're having conversations. That means you're getting feedback. From most people right now, you're hearing nothing. You're being ignored. So no is a good thing, and no does not mean never.
Yes. Some great questions coming from Andrea and Dana that would just help clarify a few things. In terms of the Guerrilla Resume, are you finding problems with that in terms of scannable, if they're submitting to a larger employer? What recommendations would you give for positioning certain things like those quotations from references? Is that in a job description, or is it down at the bottom? And
Sure.
A few questions about thank you letter content.
Sure. So first, the resume. I love when people ask, how can I submit my Guerrilla Resume to a website? Well, you have to slap yourself hard in the face, because you've just defaulted to an average job search. Average job seekers apply online for positions that are advertised. What you want to do is print a color Guerrilla Resume, get it into the physical hands of the hiring authority. He or she will then call HR and say, hey, you got to talk to Lisa. Have her submit her resume online. At that point, you just turn it into a plain text resume. It's a simple copy and paste idea. The quotes can go at the bottom. The logos will be left out. But the first contact that you make with a potential employer should be a paper version of your Guerrilla Resume, because you're changing the rules of the game at this point. And they're going to call HR and tell them, hey, you got to talk to this person. So try to make your initial contact the Guerrilla Resume, and at that point they know who you are and they're on the lookout for your submitted resume online. In terms of a thank you note, I have terrible handwriting, so I usually write just a couple sentences in a thank you note, and that's all that are needed. But you just want to recap what you talked about in the interview. It's probably best for most people if you actually type your thank you notes and just recap the contents of your interview. As we discussed, I'm very interested in this, that, and the other thing. I really enjoyed meeting Sally and Cindy and Sue and you. If you list all their names, they'll be super, super impressed. So take notes in your interview so that you can do that, and then you can sign it at the bottom. So again, the only way to get a thank you note wrong is to not send one in the first place. Don't agonize over the contents. Just get the thing out there. Typed and recapping the interview is probably best, but at the very least, just take some thank you notes with you. Write something in the interview, drop it in the mailbox in the lobby, and that's going to work well for you in any case.
Great. And Dana's asked the question, writing letters for positions that don't exist. Is there such thing as a guerrilla cover letter?
There
or is that the
that's
coffee
a topic.
cup caper?
Yeah, the what you want to do is you just want to say, I've studied your company. There's more to it. You want to demonstrate some knowledge of the company, and I'd like to meet with you and discuss your needs. I know that you're coming out with the X10 project, and I have some contacts at one of your vendors or whatever. Just demonstrate some knowledge of the company. But if you're asking to meet with people and discuss their needs, what you're having is a business conversation. When you sit across from someone in a business conversation, you're on an equal level with them because you're a problem solver that could come in to fix stuff for them. Whereas if you're having a job interview, you're automatically a supplicant. You're on a lower level. And so it's very important. You want to approach these, when you're contacting companies to meet, you want to have business meetings. You don't want to have job interviews. A business meeting is where a position is created for you, whereas a job interview is where if you're a square peg and they have a round hole to fill, you miss out. So it's a mind shift there. You're pushing for a meeting, a business meeting, where you want to discuss their issues, their problems, and offer some solutions based on your knowledge and experience. Much more about this, by the way, if you Google Coffee Cup Capers in my name, or grab a copy of the book. I'm just literally touching the tip of the iceberg here today, but really I want to just implant some ideas in people's minds. There are better ways, different ways to find a job than what you're doing now, and these are just some of them.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin. We're right here at 1:30, so I'm going to leave the chat area open. Kevin, if you are comfortable, whatever you would consider appropriate ways for individuals to contact you. Oh, here we go. LinkedIn, beautiful.
Yeah,
we'll do that.
I invite everyone to connect with me, any Spartan. I'm happy to connect with you. I do have to get ready for an appointment, so I'm going to have to leave just in a minute from now. I won't have any time to answer specific questions. Normally not able to answer specific questions by email as well, but I'm always delighted to link up with people on LinkedIn. If there's anyone in my network that you'd like to meet, I could make an introduction that way. But again, I would refer folks to the book Guerrilla Marketing for Job Hunters 3.0. You can get it on Amazon or anywhere else. It's typically only one copy in the bookstore, but that is anything I could possibly say about job search is going to be in that book. And of course, I'd invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn.
Great. And I will say thank you for joining us, Kevin. We understand you have to scoot. I will leave this room open so people can peel through the chat area and mine out any information that is helpful to you there. Thank you for joining us. Our next webcast will actually be in 2 weeks. We offer our professional series webcasts the second and fourth Thursday of the month, and that will be with the focus on the franchise entrepreneur. In the meantime, we do invite you to connect deeper with your MSU Alumni Association personal enrichment, professional enrichment team through the MSU Alumni Association LinkedIn group. It is titled as that, MSU Alumni Association. It does designate that it's our official group. There are about 46,000 Spartans in there. You may also connect with us on Twitter at Helping Spartans and at MSUAA. I will add that in there. So if you would like a recording of this webcast, I will include Brenda Haynes' email address one more time. So thank you for joining us, and go green.
Thanks, folks. Good afternoon.